Hello. So good to be with you. Today, I want to talk to you about why it matters who you're listening to. Um, I have found throughout my journey as an entrepreneur that there are critical moments when you're building your business where who you're listening to, where you're getting your information from makes an enormous difference. And there are a lot of, as human beings, of course, we all have our blind spots. And it's really important that you are aware of the blind spots of the person you're talking to or getting your information from. And I just want to say that it can have really big implications on your business and your health, right? Your ability to be successful. So, just to give you like a small personal example, when I was starting Sunlight Tax, my husband, who is, he's awesome. I love him. He's very supportive and great. But he exists in a certain culture, right? He's a white dude and he's sort of a serial startup person. He's worked in a series of startups and he's a software engineer. So, some things about that world. And also, these are venture backed companies typically, or companies that have funding, right? And so, there's a certain way that that kind of business operates. Not every business operates the way a venture backed company operates, and especially not one that has a team of high paid software engineers. Right. So my husband would give me advice. And also, if just dialing that back a little bit, this tends to be a more white male environment than the norm, right? Venture funding notoriously, it's improved, but notoriously goes more disproportionately to white male enterprises than normal. And if you're in a world of software engineers, that is also a world that, despite its attempts to do better, is still so predominantly white and male, is a little problematic. So there's some assumptions built into that world, right? Startup culture is hustle hard and it assumes a certain pace of work, right? So as I was starting Sunlight Tax, my husband would chime in from time to time with his advice on how I should run it. And I'm going to be totally honest with you. A lot of the time, in a respectful way, I would simply ignore it because the assumption that he was often coming from when giving me advice on how to run my business was an assumption that someone else was taking care of the kids. And of course, at the time, I was the one taking care of the kids. So working startup level hours was not an option for me, right? I did not have the ability to work from the moment I got up, have someone else cook dinner and pick up my children. And in fact, when I really started, I was nursing babies. I was going through pregnancy and nursing and not sleeping through the night, right? So this was a very different world that I was living in from the world he was living in. And also, I remember him saying phrases to me like, "Oh, you can just hire for that. Don't worry about that. You can just hire for that." And I just remember thinking, like, in what universe am I at this stage of my business going to hire? That I am a one-woman show, right? I never planned to get outside funding for my business. I always was going to be bootstrapping. Whereas, yes, in a startup environment, you do have those assumptions. You do say, "Oh, the stuff you're not good at, you just hire for that," right? That's true. But when you are bootstrapping your own business, when you are a solo person, you start doing every job yourself. And you cannot just hire for everything you want to. You have to get your business to a certain level where you have the ability to hire even just a little bit of time from a contractor. P.S. If you want to hear some episodes about hiring, contractors, employees, times to hire, my horror stories about hiring, send me a note on Instagram so I know that you're interested. I have plenty of those stories. Happy to share my painful lessons on that. But anyway, I mean, I don't mean to, my husband is very wise and he's very good at what he does. But what I'm saying here is that I don't think he knew what his blind spots were when he was giving advice to me about running my business, right? I knew. And I also, as a woman who started a business at a time where I had gone back to school during pregnancy, I had a miscarriage in my economics class. And just like, I mean, oh my God, it was like, that was a pretty brutal, difficult experience, right? Training in tax firms in New York City and pumping in the bathroom. And let me tell you, those were very male-centered environments. One of the places I worked, I really was made to feel quite uncomfortable as a woman. And at that time, I was pumping in the bathroom during my breaks. And it was awful. It was absolutely awful. And I felt like I just do not want to model myself after any place that doesn't see how difficult it is to be a working parent, especially one who, is using her body to care for her children and has to go take breaks every couple hours to pump, right? So that just is not an experience that everybody has. And it's something that, of course, if you are raising babies, could be very, very important to you and something you need to be very careful to shelter, right? So there's lots of values I have been very careful to shelter as I started my business that other people around would have, if I'd taken their advice, it would have obliterated them, right? So I want to speak to you today about just a couple sample examples of places where I've seen blind spots that could potentially really injure people, and where it's really important that they let their own voice really shine through, their own values really shine through, and that makes a much better, stronger business that serves that person better. And ultimately, my goal here is that I want you to feel comfortable making decisions that are best for you when it comes to your business and not based on some template from a person who doesn't see or understand you. Okay. So, um, I was recently at this business retreat and talking to this really wonderful, smart woman who I will not give any identifying details about for reasons that will become clear. And we were talking about just like visibility, having a website, putting your stuff out on social media, like attracting your audience for the work that you do. She was talking about this issue and her kind of blockages around it, right? And I think it would have been really easy in that context. And in fact, I started doing this and felt like kind of a jerk to just see this as a kind of, common problem that a lot of women have of over visibility. They feel uncomfortable being seen or being too visible. And this can be a real barrier and problem when it comes to, setting up your business and getting it out there. So, we start kind of going in and giving her advice, blah, blah, blah. And then in the end of the conversation, she reveals, she goes, yeah, well, and I said to her, like, I Googled you before I came here because I was curious about what you're doing and I couldn't find anything about you. And she said at this moment, she goes, yeah, you know what? I had a I had a bad boyfriend years ago, and I just really never want him to be able to find me. And in that moment, all the setup of this whole conversation just suddenly turned to a new and very different light, right? Suddenly it became clear, oh God, this is a safety issue for this person. This is a person who has somebody dangerous who she needs to not be able to find her. And that in fact, if you have no understanding of this part of the world, you would give her advice that would hurt her, literally hurt her, right? And it just gave me this tremendous sense of, oh my God, it just matters so much that people hold fast to the things they know they need, despite what the world might want to give you as business advice. I'll give you another example, which is about housing. So in personal finances, a lot of the conventional wisdom says, you should buy into buy into the housing market. You should be a homeowner. It's one of the major wealth building tools in the US. And you know what? If you're white, that is true. But I have been reading this book lately called The Whiteness of Wealth by Dorothy Brown. She is a tax lawyer. She is really brilliant, and this book is very good. And she talks about racism built into the US tax code. So I'm doing this as research because it's important to my work. But one of the things she talks about in this book is how the housing market has not been a wealth building tool for Black Americans historically, or even BIPOC Americans more generally. And she goes through with careful statistics and research showing how neighborhoods that are more than 50% BIPOC do not retain the value the same way that white neighborhoods do, that there is really deep racism in our housing system in the United States. Now, of course, if you are a person of color, this is going to come as no surprise to you. I hope if you're white, this also doesn't come as a surprise to you, but it might, right? And I certainly had never read research about just the degree to which this is true, and where if you look at areas where houses actually lose value at times, you can see that clearly the conventional personal finance wisdom about buying houses, you really have to take the racial makeup of the neighborhood into account. I mean, what a really sad state of affairs, right? Um, it, and when I say take the racial makeup of the neighborhood into account, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that this is a good system. Absolutely not. But what I'm saying is, I think if you are, for example, a Black woman who is trying to do the best that she can with her finances, you don't necessarily just want to listen to conventional wisdom and do stuff based on the assumption that you're white, right? That buying a home for you is going to have more nuance to it. It's going to be more difficult. Getting a loan on good terms is frankly going to be more difficult. And statistics bear that out. So some of the things that are assumed, it's really important when you're not in the group that is being assumed. It's really, really important to kind of know the facts. It's really important to work with somebody who sees you, who understands the issues of who you are and where you're coming from. I have another example, just, from some business coaches that I know up in New England. There's a coaching pair that one is a man and one is a woman, and they're lovely people, both very values aligned, very good at the work that they do. They serve entrepreneurs who are doing great work. And I have had conversations with the female coach, and she has a loving, caring relationship with the male coach. They do great work together, but a lot of times when they're talking about ideas for their, joint venture together, he is coming from an assumption that the administrative tasks of their joint operation will be done by her, right? Now, I think he was socialized in a world where he didn't have to worry about little tasks. Those were handled by women. But that is clearly an underlying assumption when he is talking. And to my friend, the woman, it's a real source of stress for her, right? Because if you think about it, she either has to do that work, take it on, right? Unfairly take on more than her half in a equal partnership, or she has to stop him, point out that he's making an assumption, stand up, hold her boundary, and say, no, I need this to be done more fairly. You're making an assumption about who does this work, right? So it takes a lot of energy for her simply to manage this relationship, this partnership, because he assumes that he doesn't have to do the little stuff, right? So, and I say this with love, like this is generally speaking, like a kind, well-meaning person who is not even aware that he has this blind spot around admin tasks being taken on by the woman, right? He's just not even aware of it. And so I say this with love, that he has to be made aware of it, and that to work with him as a woman means having to either do extra work or constantly remind him and teach him and hold up a boundary, right? That's a tough one, right? And I think a lot of us have encountered men like that. And I say this again with love, that it's a sign of love to tell people how they can improve. And then lastly, speaking myself very personally as a mother, I really deliberately turned away from business advice that was coming from men for this reason. I found over and over again in my early days in business that business advice tended to assume that you were male. And when I say assume that you were male, what I meant was that you were not responsible for picking up children at an hour that was before 5 p.m., that you were not responsible for shopping and cooking for the household, that you were not responsible for, that basically the tasks of running Household Inc. were not falling on you, right? That you had 70 hours a week to give to your venture. And for a lot of, I'm going to say women raising families, I hope it's more equal than that. And it's really about all people running families. That's the world I want to see. But, if you like me, and I was a stay-at-home mom for the first 2 years of my oldest daughter's life, these tasks did fall to me just by dint of not being the earner, being someone who was only taking care of, the kiddo, the baby. And so for that very reason, and because I found that, this culture, the US culture is not particularly supportive of mothers or families, that there were lots of places in life where the assumption was that you don't have kids, you don't have the obligations of raising kids. And of course, any parent out there is going to tell you raising kids is a hell of a job. It takes a lot of energy. Um, and so to me, it felt really important to me when learning how to build my business. I wanted to learn from women. I, in particular, felt the need to learn from women because I knew that at least in that context, no one would take for granted that there was someone else to do small administrative tasks or household tasks. Everyone knew those things were going to be on me. And at least as I built my business, I would not be accidentally building a business that was not sustainable because it assumed an ability to do things that I did not actually have the capacity for. So I joined a coaching program with Rachel Rogers, like a group program. Rachel Rogers, if you don't know her, she grew up poor in New York City. She's a Black woman. She's a lawyer. She now lives in North Carolina, and she's just brilliant, super smart businesswoman. And she's faced a lot of the sort of like discrimination and, sort of multi-angled trials of a Black woman. And so I was like, I want to learn from her. I want to learn from her because she knows she's not going to make assumptions that go against what are going to, work for my business. And indeed, it made me very happy that in her trainings, she talked about like taking days off to chaperone a school field trip, or, like the importance of family vacations or being present at school pickup if you choose to do that, right? And of course, that's not to say you're not working a lot of nights and weekends because starting a business is so hard. It really does have a lot of demands like that. But I at least wanted it coming from someone who understood the other demands that were happening in life at the same time. So anyway, those are kind of my thoughts about the dangers when somebody who's giving you advice doesn't see the full picture of where you're coming from. And I also want to say that this can be an opportunity. This can be a thing that you can see. You might, you can see this in the negative, and it's very negative for sure, but you can also see it in the positive. To me, this presented the business opportunity of a lifetime, right? I, as an artist, felt so unseen, so disrespected in the, yes, predominantly white male space of money and finance. I felt it impossible to get good tax information that I needed to run my art practice, right? And ultimately, that became my business. Seeing that hole, it's literally a hole in the market, right? And so I think when you look around and you see places where you're not being seen, you're not being served, people like you are not being seen or served, I want you to look at this from the other end of that telescope and think, oh my God, there's a business in that. Because you know what? There is. Um, so I hope that this gives you that courage, that encouragement that you're not wrong and that you can make your business grow and thrive too, and you can do it on your own terms, but to really seek out advisors, whether it's coaches, tax people, programs where you really feel seen and respected, where the work you do is respected and seen and understood, and where the people who are teaching you don't take for granted things in your life that simply aren't true. And this is really part of the vision that I have in this world, where I really want a world of BIPOC-owned, female and non-binary, queer-run businesses that reflect a rainbow, right? And see the unique nuances of our individual and collective worlds, and that serve these populations that have not always been seen or served the way that we deserve. So you have a place in this, whether it is, looking to coaches, looking to advisors who see you and respect you and understand the fullness of your picture, but also on the other side, where this can reveal to you a place where you can serve and you can build a business that not just supports your family, your life, but also helps your community that you care about really thrive. To me, that is the dream. And so I want to help you feel really comfortable making that dream real for yourself. Awesome. Now, I just want to wrap up by reminding you, if you did not hear last week's episode, a lot of you have asked me for, that I run a program about setting up your small business and organizing for taxes and also growing your long-term financial stability. And that program is called Money Bootcamp. And I know that that program is a little more than some of you are ready for, right? If you are really, really pinching pennies and not ready for a bigger commitment, it might just be too big of a commitment at this moment, which is fine. So a lot of you have asked me for a smaller chunk, like a smaller piece. You like the education that I offer, but you're not ready for the bigger step. And I just want to let you know that I heard you and I made it. And so you can get my class on IRS proofing your business deductions and ensuring you get every dollar. This is a $97 class. You can complete it in just an hour. It's everything you need to know about self-employed tax deductions. It's visual and clear. It's not dry or boring. And it'll help you handle all those tricky questions and unknowns when it comes to your deductions. So if you're worried you're maybe not tracking things right, if you're bothered that you might be losing more money than you should, if you're not feeling seen when it comes to understanding your tax deductions or being able to talk to a tax advisor who really gets you, this course is straight out of my more comprehensive program, Money Bootcamp. It's a great starting point to IRS-proof your business deductions. So it helps you handle stuff like the home office, your mileage, business meals, depreciable equipment, all the kind of tricky and nuanced areas. Make sure that you IRS-proof them and get them right. And the bonus I want to tell you about there is that if you do eventually in the next, like, say 30 days, decide to join my more comprehensive program, Money Bootcamp, then you will receive inside, when you buy this IRS Proof Your Deductions course, you'll receive a discount code of $97, the full cost of this course. That discount code will be applied to Money Bootcamp, effectively making this course purchase free if you later decide to join Money Bootcamp. So I hope that takes the risk out of it and helps you to make, dip your toe in and get one really awesome piece of money in your pocket and security, knowing that you have IRS proofed your business deductions. You can get that class if you're interested in it. You can get it at sunlighttax.com/deductions. So sunlighttax.com/deductions, that's plural. Again, the class is $97. It's 1 hour. It comes with a visual guide to your tax deductions, and it comes with a very robust reference outline. It's very organized. So if you ever want to go back to it and refer to just the depreciation section or just the mileage section, you can just go right into the outline and see it immediately with all the rules. So I hope that that helps you, give you a little doable chunk. And I hope all of you, whether you're interested in that or not, I'm wishing all of you all the strength, all the power to be seen, to advocate for yourself, to seek out what you really and truly need, and ignore the irrelevant noise as you grow a business that is serving people that you truly care about, as I care about you. All right. Thanks for listening, all. See you next time. Bye. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'm so grateful for that. This video is for education and entertainment only. Nothing in this episode should be taken as individual tax or financial advice. You can find all the tools, books, and links I reference at sunlighttax.com/podcast.